Work and pleasure. When children learn English in Germany, they are often taught as one of the first poems they are made acquainted with. Work while you work, play while you play. This is the way to be cheerful and gay. The idea is that by strictly keeping work and pleasure apart, both ranges of activity will benefit. No instinctual aberrations will interfere with seriousness of rational behavior. No signs of seriousness and responsibility will cast their shadow over the fun. Obviously, this advice is somehow derived from social organization, which affects the individual inasmuch as his life falls into two sections, one where he functions as a producer and one where he functions as a consumer. It is as though the basic dichotomy of the economic life process of society were projected upon the individual. Psychologically, the compulsive connotations based on a Puritan outlook can hardly be overlooked, not only with regard to the biphasic pattern of life as a whole, but also to notions such as cleanliness. Neither of the two spheres must be contaminated by the other. While the advice may offer advantages in terms of economic rationalization, its intrinsic merits are of a dubious nature. Work, completely severed from the element of playfulness, becomes drab and monotonous, a tendency which is consummated by the complete quantification of industrial work. Pleasure, when equally isolated from the serious content of life, becomes silly, meaningless, and sheer entertainment, and ultimately it is a mere means of reproducing one's working capacity. Whereas the real substance of any non-utilitarian activity lies in the way it faces and sublimates reality problems. Res severa verum gaudium. The complete severance of work and play as an attitudinal pattern of the total personality may justly be called a process of disintegration, strangely concomitant with the integration of utilitarian operations, for the sake of which this dichotomy has been introduced. The column does not bother about such problems, but sticks to the well-established work while you work, play while you play advice. It thus falls in line with many phrases of contemporary mass culture, where maxims of the earlier development of middle-class society are repeated in a congealed form, although their technological and sociological basis does not exist anymore. The columnist is very well aware of the drudgery of most subordinate functions in a hierarchical and bureaucratic setup, and of the resistance bred in those who have to do some work which is often completely alien to their subjective urges, which can be done as well by anyone else, and which may have been reduced to so small mechanical functions that it cannot possibly be regarded as meaningful. They are continuously admonished to attend to this kind of work under the flimsy pretext that this is the way to comply with the order of the day. However, in this ideology, there are some subtle, significant changes in comparison with the old work while you work attitude. What people are supposed to do during AM is no longer supposed to be an autonomous activity molded after the model of the independent entrepreneur. Rather, they are encouraged to fulfill little and insignificant set tasks in a machinery. Thus, the admonition to work and not to allow oneself to be distracted by any instinctual interference has frequently the form that one should attend to one's chores. Quote, dismal early AM forgotten by plunging into routine chores. November 21st, 1952, Leo. Keep plugging at chores. December 19th, 1952, Sagittarius. Stick to attending chores. December 27th, 1952, Sagittarius. End quote. Most of the time, chores are to be done right away according to such advice, occasionally, and this is characteristic of the column's mosaic technique that brings the same basic categories into various configurations, to be postponed for more suitable times. Quote, it is unnecessary that you fuss so much with routine chores this morning. November 10th, 1952, Taurus. End quote. The term chores seems to conjure up unquestioningly accepting minor tasks as a superior law, guided not by insight into their intrinsic necessity, but only by fear of punishment. The column strives to overcome resistance against meaningless routine work by playing upon compulsive libidinization that increases so often in reverse proportion to the importance of the chores. This psychological tendency is exploited even more when the idea of minor responsibilities is carried over to private existence. Activities such as washing one's car or fixing some household contraption, inferior though they may be, are still somewhat closer to the subject's own range of interest than the business routine, for those activities pertain to what belongs to him and is regarded as part of his ego realm, whereas he often feels that what he does in business ultimately serves only others. This observation is fused with the columnist's knowledge of the tremendous and doubtlessly irrational role of gadgeteering in the psychological household of many people today. Labor-saving devices, primarily necessitated by objective conditions such as the scarcity of domestic help, are invested with a halo of their own. This may be indicative of a fixation to a phase of adolescent activities in which people try to adapt themselves to modern technology by making it, as it were, their own cause. It may be mentioned in this connection that the real psychodynamics of gadgeteering are still largely unexplored, and that their study would be utterly timely in order to gain insight into the emotional ties between the objective setup of contemporary conditions and the individuals who live under these conditions. It seems that the kind of retrogression highly characteristic of persons who do not any longer feel to be the self-determining subjects of their fate is concomitant with a fetishistic attitude towards the very same conditions which tend to be dehumanizing them. The more they are gradually being transformed into things, the more they invest things with a human aura. At the same time, the libidinization of gadgets is indirectly narcissistic, inasmuch as it feeds on the ego's control of nature. Gadgets provide the subject with some memories of early feelings of omnipotence. Since this type of cathexis shifts from ends to means, which are treated as though they were things themselves, a close affinity to concretism can be observed. This is given way in the column by the occasional, rather eccentric statements such as, buy interesting gadgets. Quote, make more happiness there for your home, buy more interesting gadgets. December 3rd, 1952, Aquarius. End quote.